Today we've got a crazy story of revenge that ends up costing somebody a $150,000 car, prison time, and a ruined life. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, my fiancé cheated with several men, including a registered offender, so I took my revenge. After being asked by many people why that wasn't posted to Nuclear or Pro Revenge, I've decided to try again. Moderators at Pro explained why I didn't qualify and suggested Nuclear, but it never posted after my submission. I think it was maybe because my account was only days old, so fingers crossed it works this time. I met my ex in 2012, right after I had just turned 30. I'd only dated and been with a woman exclusively until I came out as bisexual at 28. Let's just say the year I was 29 was a busy year making up for what I missed out on. It was mostly casual hookups. Yes, safe, and I did try dating 2 different guys for a few weeks, but it just never worked out or got serious. I kind of figured that I would probably end up marrying a woman or not getting married at all because I just didn't see myself catching romantic and intimate feelings for a guy. Then I met Ryan. From the first date, it was just like the only other time in my life I had fallen in love. Butterflies, constantly thinking about him, wanting to spend every moment with him. He fell hard for me too, and we became an item. Though he did say while he considered my bisexuality a turn-on, because he had a thing for straight guys, it also gave him pause because of my desires for the opposite sex, and his concern it may lead me astray. I thought about it and understood it was a legitimate worry, but assured him that I couldn't even think about anyone else because I was really into him. Note, I knew he was the one by the end of the first month and I was in love, but I wasn't going to say these things too soon and risk scaring him off. On our first date, he admitted to me that he was legally blind due to a genetic disorder and that it was progressive, and eventually he would only have a sliver of his peripheral vision. He immediately said he understood if I didn't want to see him again because no other guy had wanted to date him and be his driver all of the time. I grew up with a brother in a wheelchair who never learned how to walk or talk due to misdiagnosed meningitis at 6 months old back in the 70s. I told them that and said that what my brother had was a severe disability, so in my perspective, his blindness had no effect on my feelings, and that always being the driver was a small sacrifice just to be with him. The following years were bliss. We brought out the best in each other. My family, who was surprised but very supportive when I came out, adored Ryan and treated him like family and said that I acted happier since we'd been together. When I met him, he was working part-time in retail and had done very poorly in high school because he had lost a lot of his confidence as his vision deteriorated. I told him one thing I did insist on was that he do something with his life because he had too much to offer and that I would help. He said that he wanted to be a teacher but didn't think someone with limited vision could teach. Nonsense. So I put him through community college for 2 years, then 2.5 years of a local university, and finally the 1-year teacher certification program as required by California. I drove countless miles and paid hundreds in public transportation costs for him, never blinking an eye or complaining. We had been together for 7.5 years and were engaged to be married in October by the time he was in his last semester of his teaching certification, which involved him student teaching at his former high school with his favorite teacher from his days in school. Then the pandemic hit and schools closed. Fortunately, he had enough hours in the classroom that he would still qualify to be certified after the governor issued a waiver via executive order. On the 3rd day of the stay-at-home order in March, my life crumbled when I innocently found out he had cheated on me with an ex, all because he handed his phone to me to show me something on Instagram. I accidentally fat-thumbed the back arrow when he gave it to me, taking me back to a list of all his messages. I looked and recognized the name of his ex, Johnny, as the second message, dated a week ago. I clicked on it and my heart sank. Directions to my house, pictures, dirty talk, and reassuring Johnny not to worry about me because he had my location on my Find My Friends just in case I came home from work. I immediately started screaming, demanding to know everything, and he admitted to having his ex over twice for hooking up and that they didn't use protection. Johnny was engaged to his girlfriend during this, adding another victim. Then he admitted to sleeping with a straight but curious recently single cousin, Tyler, twice, again no protection. Finally, he admitted to sleeping with a supposedly straight guy named Thomas that he and many of my cousins went to school with, who I told Ryan I really didn't like him or want them talking because I didn't trust him after what I'd read about him. Since they were never close friends, I didn't feel like this was a big sacrifice or that I was being too controlling, and I assumed that he knew why I and all my cousins felt that way but didn't bother repeating it. The reason was, after high school at age 20, this guy was convicted of SA and penetration with a foreign object against a 16-year-old girl and had gone to jail and required to register as a registered offender for life. Apparently, my ex was the only person in his graduating class that hadn't heard that news. All of this happened in my home while I was working. We spent the whole weekend crying, with me asking over and over why and him repeatedly crying and saying he just didn't know and that he felt terrible. Monday comes around and anger started being as common as sadness, and I made a comment that said that I was going to pull all the phone records going back the 3 years that AT&T kept them for a fee. Only when he heard that did he admit to one more guy. Some random named Frankie off the gay hookup app Grindr, who was the first guy he cheated with and continued to casually hook up with for nearly 2 years, with the last time being in February, the month before. He told me how it started. Get this, it was the day after his graduation with his Bachelor of Arts in May 2018, and he was drunk from celebrating and wanted to hook up. I too had been celebrating with him and said I was too drunk to perform and said I would make up for it the next day, then passed out asleep on the couch. Apparently, he was angry horny because he downloaded Grindr, chatted with this Frankie fellow, and arranged to hook up in his car in a church parking lot across the street from our condo, which happens to be across the street from a school. This fact is important later, all while I slept on the couch. All the times they hooked up after that was again in my condo while I was working or visiting a friend for the night up the coast. He used to love going but started saying he couldn't occasionally because of homework and studying. I absolutely lost it. Told him to get in the car and I drove him to his family's house so he could tell them what he did so they understood why he was moving back into their house. While he was in the house, I was in the driveway on the phone with AT&T ordering the 3 years worth of detailed call and text logs, then made an appointment to be screened for STIs. I suspended his service until he could figure out how to pay for his own dang phone. Then I temporarily changed all of his passwords on the social media accounts he cheated with and to make sure he couldn't hide more evidence so only I would have access to his cloud. We shared each other's passwords on his suggestions years before. I also called the bank and issued a stop payment on his final tuition check that I had sent to the certification program the week before and hadn't hit the bank yet. Before deleting his social media, except Facebook, I took screenshots of the entire Instagram conversation with Johnny the ex and mailed the conversation to his fiancé, who deserved to know so she could see a doctor and get tested too. His family was very religious and had kicked him out in high school for 3 days when he tried to admit he was bi, and only took him back in when he took it back. Needless to say, she ended it, he got kicked out, 1 down. He came back out to the car, and we went home. I took his house key and told him to say goodbye to our 3 pets and get packing. The entire time he packed, I studied those phone records to find out dates, times, and if there was anyone else he was leaving out. He answered every question I asked, and it was then that I discovered that Thomas the registered offender and he had only had oral hooking up in my home, and that the actual hooking up was in the same parking lot he screwed the Frankie guy in. The wheels started turning, and the next day, I walked over to the church and sure enough, spotted a camera. I spoke to a secretary, sweet old lady at the church, and informed them about a registered offender hooking up in their lot, and that not only was it a violation of his parole for indecent exposure, but that he was not allowed to be that close to his school, and I provided the date. I was in luck. They had a digital 2-year loop system that started deleting day by day after it had been retained for 2 years. It was April 2020, and he first cheated with Frankie in May 2018, and the registered offender was in April 2019. I told them I was filing a police report and that probation would require a copy of it eventually. They said that they would save the file and allowed me a thumb drive of both days to submit with my police report. Within a month, Thomas the registered offender was locked up again. 2 down. I also filed a police report against the Frankie guy. The police said it was a relatively minor infraction, but since it was across from a school playground and skate park, they would follow up. But there would be no jail time. I researched the heck out of Frankie and called him to confront him. He was smug and admitted to knowing about me the whole time. What he didn't know is that I had found out that he had a job that required a security clearance, and he had several judgments against him, and collection agencies had been looking for him. Best money I ever spent on a data collection site. I didn't know why they couldn't find him and just garnish his wages, but it ends up he was Hispanic and had 2 last names and was a junior. Plus, he went frequently by his middle name Francisco, Frankie for short. So he got lost in paperwork confusion. I sent a letter to the collection agencies providing his employer and current location and contact info, and then sent a copy of the police report about misdemeanor indecent exposure, for which he pled guilty, and it was a fine with community service, not considered a sex crime. His wages did get garnished, but only for 2 paychecks because the misdemeanor was enough for him to lose his security clearance and get fired. 3 down. Then I contacted Ryan's family on his mother's side, pretending to be him from his Facebook account, making sure that they knew he had freaked his cousin Tyler. It spread through the family like wildfire, and soon Tyler was contacting me because he couldn't get a hold of Ryan to ask why he would expose what they did. I just laughed and said you shouldn't screw your cousins, especially when they're engaged, and that he had messed around in my house, so now it was my turn for payback. 4 down. Lastly, I had already stopped payment, but since he was so close to finishing, I was sure his family would bail him out and pay the university. Like I said, indecent exposure is usually a slap on the wrist type misdemeanor. However, I remembered some of the paperwork he signed to be a mandated reporter that you could lose teaching certification for documented acts of moral turpitude. I sent a copy of both police reports from the parking lot with still shots from the security footage, clearly showing Ryan's face, to the school district he'd been student teaching in, and a copy to the Commission on Teacher Credentials. 5th and final down. Admittedly, I did this all out of anger, but he shattered my sense of self-worth and made me incredibly bitter and untrusting after years of being generous and supporting him. Everywhere I looked in the town, I thought of Ryan and the cheating. I felt a terrible energy in my condo knowing it all happened there. I stayed 9 months and watched all 5 of their lives self-destruct, then sold my condo, making a nice profit, and relocated to the Pacific Northwest to start over. One thing that is sad is I found out just recently that his ex, whose fiancé broke up with him, ended up ending things several months after I moved. It's too bad that his family was so closed-minded to turn on their own son. But in the end, it's not my fault that he cheated on his fiancée by coming into my home at my fiancé's invitation to cheat. Ending things is never the answer to one's problems, and I hope the fiancé he cheated on doesn't blame herself, and that only his family does, as they should. Update, for those that haven't seen the original post's comments, yes, I did seek therapy. This was 4 years ago, and after 18 months of therapy that didn't really help, I was referred to a newer therapy for PTSD called ketamine infusion therapy, and it was like magic. In 6 sessions over 3 weeks, I was relieved of all of my pent-up anger and resentment and actually able to trust and date again. I'm now happily married and settled in the Pacific Northwest. I legitimately don't think there is any greater motivator in this world than a person who had a partner who just freaked around on them. You want to talk about a sense of clarity, a mission? I feel like for a few month-long window, people can turn into Sherlock Holmes when they have revenge on their freaking around partner to get. I guess a good question I would have is what OP did here fair game and fair play? Or did OP maybe lose themselves too much in this? I'd love to know. And also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of nuclear revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. Our next story is, my abusive mother gets a karmic response. It took 2 days to destroy the life of my abusive mother. We had a long story, of course. I cut my contacts with her 6 years ago and just disappeared. I got in contact with my niece, let's call her Eva, 18 years old, a while ago. My mother, Hope, 63 years old, became her caregiver sometime after I left. Now, Eva lives with me and my husband. Eva chose to help her grandmother, my mother, financially even after she moved away from her. I didn't get involved with it. As I've told, it's her choice. Eva has left her cash card to Hope under one simple condition: Hope should notify her if she's going to put or withdraw cash from her card. Hope was free to buy anything she needed with the card. The only thing she has to do is notifying whether she wanted to use the card in other financial operations. Eva was regularly putting money on the card. She also paid Hope's rent for a year in advance because my mother cannot afford rent and could have turned homeless without help. My mother had freaked me up when I was young and trying to help her, so I refused to get involved with it, and my siblings refused too because of her behavior. Hope was abusing Eva's help for a while with not notifying her, and Eva knew about it. She wasn't okay with it, of course, but let it slip until yesterday. It turned out that Hope gave Eva's card to the third person for a free use, including putting and withdrawing cash. Eva wrote her asking what the heck and why is she using her card this way without asking. Hope used her best strategy. She blamed Eva for being a jerk. She said that she had no choice. One of the things Hope had said to her was that if Eva really meant to help her, then she should shut up and do it without words and conditions, and that Eva doesn't have a right to complain. She'd also said that Eva is free to betray her and leave, as me and my siblings did after we used her, including one of my older brothers who hadn't even lived with her from the age of 11, and Hope never did a thing for him since. We've had a long conversation with Eva after that. I once again explained that all of this is not Eva's fault and that my mother has always been like that. I wasn't even surprised at the answer Eva got. I've gotten similar answers when I was younger. Hope didn't change at all. Next day, Eva told Hope that she's still waiting for an apology. She told Hope a ton of things about the violation of their agreement, about her manipulations, about her not listening and not caring for people who were trying their best to support her, which is why they're leaving her all the time. She pointed out that the current problem is that Hope is crossing all the boundaries set and that not knowing about what is happening with her bank card can put Eva in serious trouble, especially giving the card away. I've seen screenshots, and after reading all of that, I believe that Eva tried her best to explain Hope her position. All that Hope said was, "I understood. You are blaming me for being a terrible person, and I don't want to fight. Go away, live your life. Feel free to not care about me anymore. I'll be better homeless than be treated like that." Now, Eva had blocked her card, and neither Hope nor the third person cannot use it. Eva will also not pay rent anymore, so in July, Hope will need to find a place to live in. Eva also called all the relatives who had supported my mother. They are shocked and will never help her anymore, as the things Hope told them was completely different, but apparently Hope was like that from a young age. They didn't know how Hope had been treating her children and grandchildren, and they thought that in her 50s, Hope had finally settled down and matured. They gave Eva their full support, and they advised her to run away, cut Hope off, and never cross with her again. They're going to stay in touch with Hope as she is their sister, but they will never believe her again. They've also asked about me. I lived with them when I was a child, and I never called them since I turned 18, which is a different story, and I'm the only person to blame. I love them, but I also didn't want to harm them, and I actually never believed they would trust me, as Hope did insane things to me and my siblings, which they didn't know about. I've gotten their number from Eva, and I'm going to call them this Saturday and talk it all through. Hope has befriended some of my school teachers I was close with when I was a teen, and I'm going to find their phones and talk to them too. I don't know how this will work, but I also don't want Hope to use them, as no one from her family will support her anymore. I'm in rage for all the things she told the Eva. So in 2 days, Hope has lost her family and her house, not now, but in the future for sure. I will also try to make her lose her friends so she would have no one to turn to in need. And you know what? She deserved it for years of abuse. It took me a long time for figuring out what I can do, but we will make her completely destroyed for all that she's done. I'm not sorry for that, and I'm pretty sure right now that I'm doing the right thing. I don't want Eva to be as broken as I am. I feel like it's tragic for anybody to be in this situation where you feel like you have to just cut all leads, all safeguards. You can't throw a life vest to somebody who's just paddling around in the ocean because if you do, they'll just try to yank you in with them. Now, take that and then apply it to it being your own mom. I mean, it's an unwinnable position that you probably don't feel that great about after doing so, but you feel it's the necessary thing because otherwise, more people will just get hurt. Normally Wrong commented, "This sounds like borderline personality disorder, and from what I've observed, they cannot accept any accountability for their actions." Hope made a mistake by giving the car to someone else, but immediately tried to flip it on Eva instead of acknowledging she made a mistake and actually apologizing. OP replied saying, "I thought that she could be borderline when I was younger. That sounds insane, but the problem is that she doesn't have real emotions. She is completely calm all the time unless you tell her that some of her actions caused harm, or if you feel hurt because of something she did. Then she acts hurt and in a moment after the fight, she's completely calm again. She doesn't have mood swings too, and sometimes she hurts people just for her fun. I mean, insulting or ridiculing a person in their face and not stopping until she sees their reaction, then acting hurt or blaming the person for their reaction, then being calm and a bit glad. I've never seen her happy or sad or remorseful, and I've lived with her for years. And I understand how you can see her current actions as a mistake, but she did the worst mistakes in the past, fully knowing that her actions will cause dire consequences. She just doesn't give a freak. And I think that her response about shutting up and helping her without other words so she could do the things she wants with that help was pretty honest." Our next story is, "Make up rumors that I have CP and I'm a prostitute because I won't date you. Goodbye to your new $150,000 car, and hello prison and a ruined life. If this isn't enough for the sub, let me know and I'll move it, but been a long time lurker." Characters: me, an 18-year-old male unmedicated senior in high school, and psycho incel referred to as PI, male 16. So for backstory, I was the only gay kid in what felt like my entire small deep southern town, and came out very young, so that identity kinda stuck. My family was mostly very supportive, and I'm grateful for that because outside of 2 to 3 friends, I might as well have a scarlet A branded to my forehead. Eventually though, a few other people came out, one being PI, a very wealthy, spoiled, all-American entitled kid who drove a very, very expensive new car. Now, when he first came out, it was to no one's surprise. But regardless, a mutual friend was worried it would be a hard time and asked if I would befriend him, give him tips on how to get through it, etc. I of course said yes. Big mistake. Now, by this time, I never cared what anyone thought because the people who mattered had already made it apparent and vice versa, so I was pretty open about the fact that I was actively dating someone much, much older than me. I don't want to hear it, that's not the point of the story, and it was a wonderful and healthy relationship that my conservative traditional dad even supported, so shut up. Now, after getting coffee with PI and being friendly, he apparently developed feelings for me, and after he confessed, I gently told him I was seeing someone and that I was very happy. This was common knowledge in our gossip-ridden high school anyhow, and that was apparently not acceptable to PI, and he went ballistic. In small towns, there are often what's known as junior-senior wars, where the 2 grades have a war of harmless, albeit annoying, pranks. However, our school was not completely uncivilized, so there was a group chat for both grades to discuss rules, limits, such as no damaging, no hitting houses if someone expressed they weren't participating, renting, etc. Well, in that group chat with over 1,000 kids, PI thought it would be a great time to drop bombshell number 1. I had expressed that I was not participating, to not hit my house, it's rented, and so on and so forth. Cue PI responding directly and saying, "What, you can't afford to buy it with all the money you've been making being a prostitute for your 50-year-old boyfriend?" I would like to say that first off, my boyfriend was nowhere near that age. I saw red. I love that man to death and felt a forehead vein practically hemorrhage. Safe to say, the rumor passed throughout the high school and the community. My coaches took me aside, our extra religious teachers tormented me more, and I was a pariah. Oh well, I had acceptance to a top university, my friends, boyfriend, and family. I was almost done. Then, the next rumor dropped, and this is when I went nuclear. One day, I got a call from my friend, and immediately I knew something was wrong. Apparently, little P.I. had decided it was a good idea to lie and tell people I had 1. Cheated on my boyfriend, 2. Made a video with him, and 3. It was with a junior, someone under 18, none of which was remotely true. Thankfully, he was very popular and very straight, and also was an obsession of PIs and knew where it came from, and he agreed to, in writing, express none of this was true, and gave me copious amounts of evidence, screenshots of texts, Instagram DMs, etc. of PI's online harassment. I kept all of this in a file just in case this ever got out and I needed to defend myself, and thankfully it never became more than a funny, impossible, salacious story made up about me. However, it was too late for him, as I was already very mentally unstable, and this would have ruined everything I was riding on. Now, on to the revenge. Finally, so not only was P.I.'s car brand new, but it was a new car because he had destroyed his old one and was not getting another. Love small town gossip, but also driving through someone's house is pretty conspicuous. Now, I'll admit that I did not come up with this. I read it in a fan fiction, but it actually worked out very well. First thing I did was go to the furthest bait and tackle shop I could find and bought catfish bait. Now, if you don't fish, you might not know, but catfish love the stinkiest, smelliest bait you can find, and I bought a whole jar of the slop. I knew the parking lot of my school had no security or cameras because my car had already been vandalized. I did embrace the F word carved into my door with pride eventually, and then I got to work in the cold February morning. First thing I did was hammer nails into 3 of his tires. Now, this wouldn't pop them immediately, but they would eventually each deflate at much more inconvenient places, and nails would look more accidental than if they were slashed. Then, I took poison ivy and rubbed it all over the door handles of his car. Afterwards, I took a mix of gravel and Vaseline and spread it all over the windshield wipers, which would just scratch the heck out of it once you used them. My favorite, however, was using the catfish bait. Knowing enough about cars, i.e. copious Googling, I figured out how to get to the AC portion and poured in catfish bait. Sadly, I wouldn't be able to witness this, but he wouldn't be using his AC for another month or so since it's still cold. All that time for it to rot, fester, congeal, and the first day it's warm and he decides to blast AC, his car will be filled with the fumes of 1,000 rotten piles of roadkill and low tide without any idea where it's coming from or how to get rid of it. The next part of this story is honestly out of pure dumb luck, and I can't claim complete responsibility for the universe's work. However, I, being the obsessive paranoid type, would check his socials from a burner account now and again, perhaps hoping to hear about his fishy car or to see if he aired out more rumors about me. One day, I found something odd. Nothing. Every single social media was gone. Out of pure curiosity, I Googled his name and found something very juicy and very crazy. He was arrested in an entirely different state for attempting to impersonate a government official and bring a gun into a theme park. Safe to say that didn't fly, but it also didn't get enough traction as I would like, and thus I sent it to everyone I knew in our small town. His summer job, future college, our high school, that giant group chat of over 1,000 people. Yeah, got sent there as well. By the end of the day, he was a pariah, jobless, and collegeless. I left my town and honestly haven't heard anything about him since, but I can't imagine he amounted to much being that insane, and with that type of crime as well. Edit, since people keep saying this is not real because I called it a small town but it has a big school, when you grow up in the same town with the same kids and same siblings and same families and same houses and jobs and clubs and sports for 18 years straight, it gets small and feels small. Sorry it's not a population of 3 and dropping. Further, you could easily find the article about this crime, proving it did happen. If mods need proof, I have it all. When I hear situations like this, I'm just glad that nothing ridiculous happened to OP. I mean, OP's nickname, PI, Psycho Incel, I don't think is too crazy to give this person. When they start like obsessing with people and trying to get them in weird trouble, like I'm just glad that there's nothing that went to like physical harm or threatening or anything like that. I mean, this is a small town, right? Where's that kid's parents? They're 16 years old acting like that? But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.